The morning sun cast long shadows across Settlement 7 as Billy Martinez ran between the rows of tall green plants. His bare feet kicked up small clouds of red dust as he chased a mechanical butterfly that had escaped from the greenhouse. The 12-year-old boy laughed as he jumped over irrigation pipes, his dark hair bouncing with each leap. "Billy, get back here right now," his mother Linda called from the school building. She stood in the doorway, her teacher's uniform neat and pressed despite the early hour. Her voice carried the tired tone of someone who had said the same word 100 times before. Billy caught the butterfly in his cupped hands and walked back to his mother, grinning. "Mom, look at its wings. They have real colors, not like the gray ones the Kothani make us use in class." Linda glanced around nervously before taking the butterfly from her son. The small machine hummed softly in her palm, its wings shimmering blue and gold in the sunlight. "Where did you find this, Billy?" "In the old storage room behind the water tanks. There are lots of things there that look different from what we use now." Billy's eyes sparkled with curiosity. "Why do we have to use the gray ones? These are so much prettier." Before Linda could answer, the heavy sound of boots on metal echoed across the settlement. She quickly closed her hands around the butterfly and pushed Billy behind her. 3 tall figures in black armor walked down the main path between the buildings. Their faces were hidden behind dark helmets, but everyone in Settlement 7 knew what they were. Kothani enforcers. The aliens moved with mechanical precision, their weapons hanging from their belts like threats made real. They were here for the monthly inspection, a routine that filled every human in the settlement with dread. Billy had seen these inspections many times, but he still did not understand why everyone became so quiet when the enforcers arrived. "Good morning, Enforcer Jektar," Linda said, bowing her head as the lead figure approached. Her voice was steady, but Billy noticed her hands shaking slightly. The enforcer stopped in front of them. When he spoke, his voice came through a translator that made it sound flat and emotionless. "Teacher Martinez, the children will assemble for inspection in 10 minutes. Ensure they have their learning materials ready." "Of course, Enforcer. They are waiting inside." Linda kept her eyes down as she spoke. Jektar's helmet turned toward Billy. The boy could not see the alien's face, but he felt like he was being studied. This child was running. Running suggests excitement. Excitement suggests an authorized activity. Billy felt his mother's hand on his shoulder, squeezing gently. It was a warning to stay quiet, but Billy had never been good at staying quiet. "I was just chasing a butterfly, say. It was really pretty." The enforcer took a step closer. "Butterflies are gray. Regulation butterflies are gray. What color was this butterfly?" Linda's grip on Billy's shoulder tightened. "He meant gray, Enforcer. Children sometimes see things differently than adults." "Children see what they are taught to see," Jektar replied. "Open your hands, Teacher Martinez." Linda hesitated for just a moment before opening her palms. The colorful butterfly sat motionless in her hand, its wings catching the light like tiny stained glass windows. Several other humans had gathered nearby, drawn by the sound of voices, but they all stepped back when they saw what Linda was holding. "An authorized technology," the enforcer stated. "This device contains colors not approved for human settlements." "Where did you acquire this?" "I found it," Billy said quickly, stepping out from behind his mother. "Mom didn't know about it." "I found it in the old storage room." Jektar bent down until his helmet was level with Billy's face. "Humans are curious creatures. Too curious. This curiosity led to your species' downfall 300 years ago. This curiosity leads to questions. Questions lead to dissatisfaction. Dissatisfaction leads to rebellion." Billy looked up at the enforcer without flinching. "But why can't we have pretty things? Why does everything have to be gray?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Linda pulled Billy back against her, wrapping her arms around him protectively. The other humans in the area looked away, afraid to meet the enforcer's gaze. "Because," Jektar said slowly, "pretty things make humans think they deserve more than they're being given. Gray things remind humans of their place in the Empire." He crushed the butterfly in his armored fist. The small machine sparked once and went dark. Pieces of broken metal and colored plastic fell to the ground at Billy's feet. "Report to the Education Center," the enforcer commanded. "All humans will attend today's lesson on gratitude for Imperial protection." As the enforcers moved away, Linda knelt beside her son and began picking up the pieces of the destroyed butterfly. Billy watched her wake, his young mind trying to understand why something so beautiful had to be broken. "Mom," he whispered, "why are they afraid of colors?" Linda looked at her son's innocent face and felt her heart break a little. She had no answer that would satisfy him, no explanation that would make sense to a 12-year-old boy who just wanted to see beautiful things in the world. "I don't know, Billy," she said finally. "I really don't know." Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his cargo ship Helena's Dream, watching the space station grow larger through the main window. New Haven Orbital looked like a gray metal ring spinning slowly against the black of space. It was not beautiful, but it was home to thousands of humans who worked their loading and unloading ships like his. "Docking request approved," came the voice through the communication system. The voice belonged to Amy Brooks, his navigator, but she was pretending to be station control. "Base 7 is ready for cargo transfer." Jake nodded to his crew. Sam Peterson, the ship's engineer, was already preparing the cargo bay doors. Lisa Campbell sat at the communication station, her fingers dancing over the controls as she monitored Imperial channels for any sign of trouble. "Remember," Jake said quietly, "we are just delivering food supplies to the settlement. Nothing more." His crew understood. They had played this game many times before. The Helena's Dream carried more than just food. Hidden beneath the grain containers were boxes of books, old computer files, and weapons. Things the Korthani Empire had banned. Things that could get them all killed if discovered. The ship docked with a soft bump. Jake waited until the airlocks connected before walking to the cargo bay. Paul Henderson was already there, waiting with his loading crew. Paul ran the supply depot on the station, but his real job was much more dangerous. "Good to see you, Captain," Paul said, shaking Jake's hand. His grip was firm, and Jake felt the small piece of paper Paul pressed into his palm. "How was the trip from Kepler Station?" "Smooth flying," Jake replied, slipping the paper into his pocket without looking at it. "Though I heard there was some trouble at Factory Prime last week." Paul's face darkened. 3 workers disappeared. The enforcers said they were caught spreading illegal ideas. He lowered his voice. "Their families have not seen them since." Jake felt anger rise in his chest, but he kept his expression calm. Getting angry would not help anyone. The resistance needed cool heads and careful planning, not hot tempers. "Let's get this cargo moved," Jake said. "I want to be gone before the next patrol comes through." Paul nodded and signaled to his workers. They began moving the food containers off the ship, but Jake noticed they were very careful with certain boxes. Those were the ones that mattered most. While the loading continued, Jake walked to a quiet corner of the bay and read Paul's message. The words were written in a simple code they had developed over the years. What he read made his blood run cold. "Child executed in Settlement 7. 12 years old. Crime was reading forbidden book. Broadcast to all human settlements as warning. Population very angry but afraid to act. Need guidance." Jake crumpled the paper and put it in his mouth, chewing until it was gone. The bitter taste reminded him of why he did this wake. Children should not die for wanting to learn. "Amy," he called to his navigator, "how long until our next scheduled stop?" 6 days to reach the mining colonies," she replied. "But we could make an emergency stop at the research station if needed." Jake thought for a moment. The research station was run by humans, but it was heavily monitored. Still, Dr. Ellen Rodriguez worked there, and she was one of their most trusted contacts. "Paul," Jake said, walking back to the depot manager, "I need to ask you something private." They moved to Paul's office, a small room filled with shipping schedules and supply lists. On the wall was a picture of Earth that the Korthani had somehow missed during their regular searches. "The child who died," Jake said. "What was his name?" "Billy Martinez. His mother Linda teaches at the settlement school. His father Carlos works at farms." Paul sat heavily in his chair. The boy was caught reading a book about Earth's history. When the enforcer told him to give it up, he refused. Said humans deserved to know their real history. Said the Korthani were lying about everything. Paul rubbed his face with his hands. They shot him right there in front of his classmates. His mother collapsed. His father had to be held back by 6 men. Jake felt the familiar fire burning in his chest. A 12-year-old boy, dead for wanting to learn about his own people. It was exactly the kind of thing the Empire did to keep humans afraid and broken. How are the other cells reacting? That's a problem, Paul said. For the first time in years, they're all talking to each other. The security protocols we put in place to protect ourselves are breaking down. People are angry, Jake. Angrier than I've ever seen them. Jake understood. The Resistance had spent decades building careful networks, keeping cells separate so that if one was discovered, the others would survive. But sometimes anger was stronger than caution. What do you think we should do? Paul looked at the picture of Earth on his wall. I think maybe it's time to stop hiding. That boy's death has changed something. People are ready to fight back, even if it means dying. Jake nodded slowly. He had felt the same change in the other settlements he visited. The fear was still there, but underneath it was something new. Something that might be hope or might be desperation. Either way, it was dangerous. Send word to the other cells, Jake said finally. Tell them we're calling a meeting. It's time to see if we're ready to stop running and start fighting. Paul smiled for the first time since Jake had arrived. Billy Martinez might have saved us all. Jake hoped that was true, but he also knew that the real fight was just beginning. Billy Martinez sat under the old water tower behind the school, carefully turning the pages of the book he had found 3 days ago. The book was different from anything he had ever seen. Instead of the gray pictures and boring words in his school books, this one was full of bright colors and amazing stories. The book told him about Earth, the world where humans came from long ago. It showed pictures of great cities with buildings that reached toward the sky and machines that could fly through the air carrying hundreds of people. There were images of humans exploring space in ships they had built themselves, not as servants of other races. Billy's favorite picture showed children playing in a place called a park. The grass was green, not the brown dirt of Settlement 7. The children wore clothes of many different colors, and they were laughing as they ran around without any fear. No enforcers watched them. No one told them what they could or could not do. This is what we really are, Billy whispered to himself, touching the picture gently. This is what humans used to be. He had been reading for an hour when he heard boots walking on the metal path that led to the water tower. Billy quickly closed the book and hid it inside his shirt, but it was too late. Enforcer Jektar stepped around the corner, his black armor gleaming in the afternoon sun. "What are you doing here, young human?" the enforcer asked. His translated voice sounded curious, which made Billy more nervous than if he had sounded angry. "Just sitting, sir," Billy replied, trying to keep his voice steady. "I like to think here. It's quiet." Jektar moved closer. Billy could see his own reflection in the enforcer's dark helmet. Thinking is dangerous when done alone. Humans who think alone develop incorrect ideas. "I was just thinking about my school lessons," Billy lied. "Show me your hands." Billy's heart began to beat faster. He held out his hands, hoping the enforcer would not notice how they shook. "Stand up." Billy stood, and the book pressed against his chest. He was sure the enforcer could see it through his shirt, but Jektar seemed to be looking at something else. "You have been reading," the enforcer said. It was not a question. "Yes, sir. My school books. My mother says reading is important." "Your mother teaches approved materials. What you have been reading is not approved." Jektar pointed at Billy's shirt. "Remove the contraband." Billy's mind raced. He could pretend he did not understand, but that would only make things worse. He could run, but the enforcer would catch him easily. He could lie again, but Jektar already knew the truth. Instead, Billy did something that surprised even himself. He pulled the book from his shirt and held it up so the enforcer could see it clearly. "You're right," Billy said. "I was reading this, and I'm glad I did." Jektar took the book and looked at the cover. The title read Earth, Humanity's Lost Heritage in bright blue letters. Below the title was a picture of Earth from space, showing the blue oceans and white clouds that Billy had never seen with his own eyes. "Where did you acquire this forbidden material?" "I found it in the old storage building. There are lots of books there. Books about what humans used to be like before you came." The enforcer's helmet turned toward the storage building, then back to Billy. "You will show me this location. You will surrender all contraband materials." "No," Billy said quietly. What did you say? Billy's voice grew stronger. I said no. Humans deserve to know their real history. We deserve to know that we used to build amazing things and explore the stars. We deserve to know that we were free. By now, other people in the settlement had noticed what was happening. Billy's mother Linda came running from the school building. His father Carlos dropped his farming tools and hurried over from the fields. Other adults and children gathered around, forming a circle but staying far enough away to avoid trouble. Billy, please, his mother called out. Just give him the book. But Billy held the book tighter. Mom, you should see this. It shows what Earth was really like. It shows that humans were smart and brave and free. We weren't always servants. Humans were never free, Jektar said loudly so everyone could hear. Humans were always weak. The Empire saved your species from destroying itself. The Empire gave you purpose and order. That's not true, Billy replied. He opened the book to his favorite picture and held it up for everyone to see. Look at this. Children playing without fear. People building cities that touch the sky. Humans exploring space in their own ships. Several adults stepped closer to see the picture. Billy saw wonder in their eyes and something else. Something that looked like hope. This is what we were, Billy continued. This is what we could be again if we weren't afraid. Jektar raised his weapon. The energy rifle hummed as it powered up. Everyone in the crowd stepped back except Billy, who stood perfectly still. You are contaminated with illegal knowledge, the enforcer announced. You are spreading contamination to others. The sentence for cultural contamination is death. Linda screamed. Carlos tried to push through the crowd, but two other adults held him back. Billy looked at his parents and smiled sadly. I'm not afraid, he said. And after today, maybe no one else will be afraid either. The rifle fired once. Billy Martinez fell to the ground, the book still clutched in his small hands. The picture of children playing on Earth fluttered in the wind before settling in the red dust beside his body. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Carlos Martinez broke free from the people holding him and ran toward his son. His scream of grief echoed across Settlement 7, carrying with it the sound of something breaking forever. The message traveled through the darkness of space like a whisper that grew into a shout. Tony Garcia read it 3 times before he believed what it said. A 12-year-old boy shot dead for reading a book about Earth. The words made his hands shake with anger. Tony worked in the deep mines of Kepler Station, where humans dug rare metal from the asteroid's core. The work was dangerous and the pay was small, but it kept him close to explosives and mining equipment that could be used for other purposes. He had been planning small acts of rebellion for years, but this news changed everything. Hey, Tony, called his friend Danny Walsh from across the equipment room. You look like someone died. Tony folded the message and put it in his pocket. Someone did die. Danny, a kid named Billy Martinez, shot by an enforcer for reading a book. Danny's face went pale. He had 2 children of his own living in the family section of the station. What kind of book? A book about Earth, about what humans used to be like. Tony picked up his mining helmet and checked the light. The enforcer said he was spreading contamination. Contamination? Danny's voice got louder. Learning about our own history is contamination. Other miners had stopped their work to listen. Word spread quickly in the tight spaces of the mining station. By the end of the shift, everyone knew about Billy Martinez and what had happened to him. Meanwhile, on the industrial world called Factory Prime, Ellen Rodriguez was having her own problems. She managed a factory that made simple tools for human settlements, but her real work happened after hours when the Korthani supervisors went home. Ellen had converted part of the factory's basement into a secret workshop. There, she and a group of trusted workers modified farming equipment into weapons and built communication devices that could send messages without being detected by Imperial scanners. When the news about Billy Martinez reached Factory Prime, Ellen called an emergency meeting. 15 workers gathered in the basement, their faces lit by the glow of hidden computer screens. This changes everything, Ellen told the group. A child is dead because he wanted to learn. How many more children have to die before we fight back? But Ellen, said one of the workers, a woman named Betty Cole, we're not ready for a real fight. We have some weapons, but the Korthani have warships. Then we make more weapons, Ellen replied. We turn every tool in this factory into something that can hurt them. We show them that humans are not as weak as they think. The group worked through the night, modifying machinery and preparing supplies. By morning, they had enough weapons to arm 50 people, and Ellen had sent messages to resistance cells on a dozen other worlds. Captain Jake Morrison received Ellen's message while his ship was traveling between star systems. He immediately changed course for the research station where Dr. Kate Sullivan worked. Kate was a scientist who studied alien technology, but she also had access to information that could help the resistance. When Jake arrived at the research station, he found Kate waiting for him in her laboratory. The room was filled with strange machines and computer displays showing data that Jake did not understand. "I've been expecting you," Kate said before Jake could speak. The news about the Martinez boys reached every human settlement in this sector. People are angry, Jake. Angrier than I've ever seen them. Angry enough to fight. Kate showed him a display screen covered with messages from different worlds. "Look at this. Tony Garcia on Kepler Station is asking for weapon designs. Ellen Rodriguez on Factory Prime wants to coordinate attacks. Paul Henderson says the workers on New Haven are ready to take over the orbital station." Jake studied the messages. For the first time in decades, the resistance cells were breaking their own security rules and talking directly to each other. It was dangerous, but it was also exactly what they needed. "What about the other species?" Jake asked. "The Zelrani, the Ketani, are they ready to join us?" Kate pulled up another screen showing alien communication channels. "They are watching us, Jake. They want to see if humans are really ready to fight or if we'll just talk about it like we have for the past 50 years. And what do you think? Are we ready?" Kate was quiet for a moment. Then she showed Jake a picture that had been spreading through the human networks. It was the image from Billy Martinez's book, the one showing children playing freely on Earth. "That boy died holding this picture," Kate said. "He died believing that humans could be free again. I think that's worth fighting for." Jake nodded. "Then we call a meeting. All the cells, all the leaders. It's time to stop hiding and start planning." "Where?" "The abandoned mining station in the Titan system. It's been empty for 10 years, and it's far enough from Imperial patrol routes that we can meet safely." Kate began typing on her computer, sending out coded messages to resistance leaders across human space. "How many do you think will come?" Jake thought about Tony Garcia and his miners, about Ellen Rodriguez and her factory workers, about Paul Henderson and all the others who had spent years waiting for this moment. "All of them," he said. "Billy Martinez gave them something they haven't had in 300 years. What's that?" "A reason to believe we can win." 6 months after Billy Martinez died, the resistance struck back. They called it Operation Daybreak, and it happened on 37 worlds at exactly the same time. The Kothani Empire, which had ruled the galaxy for 3 centuries, suddenly found itself under attack everywhere at once. On New Haven, Carlos Martinez stood in the control room of the orbital station, looking down at Settlement 7 where his son had been murdered. The station was now in human hands after a fierce battle that had lasted only 2 hours. Carlos held a communication device in his hands, preparing to send a message that would be heard across the entire system. "Paul, are you ready?" Carlos asked the former supply depot manager who now commanded the station's defense systems. Paul Henderson nodded, his fingers dancing over the weapon controls. "All defense platforms are online. If the Kothani try to take this station back, they'll have a fight on their hands." Carlos activated the communication system. His voice would now reach every settlement, every ship, and every Kothani outpost in the New Haven system. "This is Carlos Martinez speaking from New Haven Orbital Station. This station is now under human control. We are no longer slaves. We are no longer afraid. This is for Billy Martinez and all the children who died because they dared to dream of freedom." The message sent shockwaves through the system. On the surface of New Haven, humans in dozens of settlements cheered when they heard Carlos's words. Many of them had known Billy, and they understood that his death had not been in vain. But New Haven was not the only world where humans were fighting back. On Kepler Station, Tony Garcia and his miners had taken control of the asteroid's defense systems using explosives and mining equipment. The Kothani garrison had been caught completely by surprise when the humans they thought were weak and broken suddenly attacked with deadly precision. "Blow the main power coupling," Tony shouted to Danny Walsh, who was placing charges on the station's central computer. "If we can't hold this place, we'll make sure they can't use it either." Danny worked quickly, his hands steady despite the laser fire echoing through the corridors. "Charges set. When do we detonate?" "When I give the signal. First, we need to get our people to the escape pods." Tony looked at the tactical display showing Kothani reinforcements approaching the station. "Looks like we've got company coming." The battle for Kepler Station was brutal but brief. The miners, who had spent years working with dangerous equipment in tight spaces, proved to be excellent fighters. They used their knowledge of the station's layout to set traps and ambushes that the Kothani could not counter. On Factory Prime, Ellen Rodriguez had turned her manufacturing plant into a fortress. The workers had spent months preparing for this day, converting their tools into weapons and their assembly lines into defensive positions. When the Kothanian forces came to crush the rebellion, they found humans who were ready to fight. "Remember," Ellen called out to her people as enemy forces surrounded the factory, "we're not just fighting for ourselves. We're fighting for every human child who deserves to grow up free." The battle raged for hours. Ellen's workers used a knowledge of machinery to create traps and weapons that the Kothani had never seen before. Manufacturing robots were reprogrammed to attack enemy soldiers. Assembly line conveyor belts became moving defensive barriers. The factory floor became a maze of metal and fire. But the most important battle was happening in space, where Captain Jake Morrison led a fleet of converted cargo ships against the Kothani patrol squadron. The human ships were not built for war, but they carried crews who had nothing left to lose. "All ships, this is Morrison," Jake broadcast to his small fleet. "Remember, we're not trying to win a space battle. We're trying to send a message. We're telling the galaxy that humans will not be slaves anymore." The space battle was fierce but short. The Kothani ships were more powerful, but the human crews fought with desperation and courage that their enemies could not match. When it was over, 3 Kothani ships were destroyed, and the rest had fled to call for reinforcements. As news of the rebellion spread, something unexpected happened. Other species that had been conquered by the Kothani began their own uprisings. The Zelrani, who lived in the ocean worlds, sabotaged Imperial supply lines. The Ketani, reptilian miners like Tony Garcia's people, seized control of important resource worlds. The Kothani Emperor, Vexmore, watched reports of the rebellion from his palace on the Imperial homeworld. For the first time in centuries, his empire was under serious threat. How did this happen? He demanded of his military advisors. How did these weak humans organize such a coordinated attack? "It began with the death of a single child," one advisor replied. "A boy named Billy Martinez who was executed for reading forbidden materials. His death seems to have united the human resistance in ways we did not expect." Emperor Vexmore studied the tactical displays showing rebellion spreading across dozens of worlds. "One child did all this." "Yes, Your Majesty." The humans appeared to have been waiting for a symbol, something to rally around. The boy's death provided that symbol. The Emperor's anger was cold and terrible. "Then we will give them something else to rally around. We will show them what happens when slaves forget their place. Summon Admiral Kreshnow. Tell him to gather the Imperial fleet. We will crush this rebellion and make sure no human ever dares to defy us again." But as the Emperor made his plans for revenge, he did not know that his empire's greatest weakness had already been exposed. For 300 years, the Kothani had ruled through fear, but Billy Martinez had shown the galaxy something more powerful than fear. He had shown them hope. Admiral Kreshnow was known throughout the galaxy as the Empire's most feared commander. His fleet had destroyed entire worlds that dared to rebel against Kothani rule. When Emperor Vexmore gave him orders to crush the human uprising, the Admiral smiled beneath his battle helmet. "Your Majesty," Kreshnow said as he stood before the Emperor's throne, "I will make these humans remember why they should fear us. When I am finished, no species in the galaxy will ever think of rebellion again." "Good," the Emperor replied. "But remember, Admiral, we need some humans alive to work our farms and factories. Kill enough to terrorize the rest, but leave enough to serve us." Kreshnow bowed. "I understand perfectly, Your Majesty." Terror is an art, and I am its greatest artist. The Admiral's fleet was massive. 100 warships, each one capable of destroying a city from orbit. They moved through space like a dark cloud, bringing death and fear to every world they visited. The first target was Kepler Station, where Tony Garcia and his miners had taken control of the asteroid base. The miners had done their best to prepare defenses, but they were not soldiers. When Kreshnao's fleet arrived, the battle was over in minutes. "Surrender now," the Admiral broadcast the station, "and I will kill only half of you. Continue to resist, and I will kill everyone." Tony Garcia stood in the station's command center, looking at the massive fleet surrounding them. He knew they could not win, but he also knew they could not surrender. Too many people were counting on them. "This is Tony Garcia," he broadcast back to the Imperial fleet. "We will not surrender. We will not bow. We will not be slaves again." "Then you will die," Kreshnau replied. The Imperial fleet opened fire. Kepler Station's shields lasted only seconds before the massive weapons tore through them. Tony Garcia died at his post, still sending messages of defiance to other resistance cells. Danny Walsh and the other miners fought until the very end, making the Korthani pay for every corridor they took. But Admiral Kreshnau was not satisfied with just destroying the station. He wanted to send a message that would terrify every human in the galaxy. So he ordered his ships to target the civilian areas first, the places where families lived and children played. The destruction of Kepler Station was broadcast across Imperial communication networks. Every human settlement, every resistance cell, every person who had dared to hope for freedom saw what happened when they defied the Empire. The Admiral's next target was Factory Prime, where Ellen Rodriguez had turned her manufacturing plant into a fortress. Ellen watched the reports from Kepler Station with tears in her eyes, but she did not surrender. "They think they can break us with fear," she told her workers as they prepared for the coming battle. "But they don't understand what Billy Martinez taught us. They don't understand that some things are worth dying for." When Kreshnau's fleet arrived at Factory Prime, Ellen and her people were ready. They had spent the last few days turning their entire factory complex into one giant trap. When the Korthani landed their troops, the humans fought like wild animals defending their young. But courage and determination could not stop orbital bombardment. Admiral Kreshnau grew tired of the ground battle and ordered his ships to destroy the factory from space. Ellen Rodriguez died when the building collapsed around her, but her last transmission reached resistance cells across the galaxy. "Remember Billy Martinez," she said. "Remember that we chose to die free rather than live as slaves." 2 more worlds suffered the same fate. Peaceful farming communities where families had lived for generations were turned into burning wasteland. Research stations where human scientists had worked to better their people's lives became clouds of debris floating in space. Captain Jake Morrison watched it all from his hiding place in the asteroid field near Titan Station. His small fleet of cargo ships could do nothing against the massive Imperial warships. All he could do was watch and plan and hope. "Captain," Amy Brooks said from the navigation station, "we're receiving a message from Dr. Kate Sullivan. She says the other species are starting to move." Jake looked at the tactical displays showing Imperial fleets spread across human space, burning world after world. "What do you mean?" "The Zelrani have attacked 3 Imperial supply convoys. The Ketani have seized control of the mining operations in the Outer Rim. Even some of the smaller species are beginning to fight back." For the first time in weeks, Jake felt something like hope. They are seeing what we're seeing. They are realizing that if the Empire will do this to humans, they'll do it to anyone. "There's more," Amy continued. "A human named General Frank Cooper has come out of hiding. His calling for all resistance forces to gather coordinates is transmitting." Jake had heard of Frank Cooper. He was a former military officer who had disappeared 20 years ago when the Empire increased its control over human settlements. If Cooper was coming back, it meant he had a plan. "Set course for those coordinates," Jake ordered. "It's time to see if we can turn this massacre into something else." "What's that, Captain?" Jake looked at the burning worlds on his display screen, thinking of Billy Martinez and Tony Garcia and Ellen Rodriguez and all the others who had died for the dream of freedom. "The beginning of the end," he said. "For them." Admiral Kreshnau had succeeded in terrorizing the humans, but he had also done something else. He had shown every species in the galaxy exactly what the Empire was capable of. And for the first time in 3 centuries, the oppressed peoples of the galaxy began to think that maybe it was better to die fighting than to live in fear. General Frank Cooper stood before the largest gathering of rebel forces in galactic history. Humans, Zelrani, Ketani, and dozens of other species filled the abandoned mining station, all united by one common goal. They wanted to end the Kothani Empire forever. Cooper was older than most people had expected, his hair gray and his face marked by years of hiding. But his eyes burned with the same fire that had driven Billy Martinez to defy an enforcer 6 months ago. "Friends," Cooper began, his voice carrying clearly through the station's main assembly hall. "We are here because a 12-year-old boy named Billy Martinez refused to give up a book. That boy died believing that freedom was worth more than life itself." The crowd was silent, listening to every word. Captain Jake Morrison sat with his crew near the front. Paul Henderson, who had escaped from New Haven before Admiral Kreshnal arrived, stood with other human survivors. Representatives from alien species that had suffered under Imperial rule filled the rest of the hall. "The Empire thinks they have won," Cooper continued. "They think that Terra campaign has broken our spirits. They are wrong. Every world they destroyed has created 1,000 new rebels. Every family they murdered has inspired 100 more to fight." Cooper activated a holographic display showing the Kothani home system. The Imperial capital world hung in space like a dark jewel, surrounded by defensive stations and patrol fleets. "This is our target," Cooper announced. "The heart of their empire. We're going to take it, and we're going to end 300 years of tyranny." A Zelrani commander named Reef Singer raised one of her aquatic appendages. "General Cooper, our combined fleets are perhaps 300 ships. The Kothani home system is defended by over 1,000 vessels. How can we hope to succeed?" Cooper smiled grimly. "Because we have something they don't expect. We have the element of surprise, and we have people who would rather die fighting than live as slaves." The plan was desperate but brilliant. While the main rebel fleet attacked the outer defensive stations, drawing the Imperial forces away from the capital, a small strike force would land on the planet itself. Their goal was to reach the Imperial Palace and capture or kill Emperor Vexmore. Captain Morrison volunteered to lead a squadron of converted cargo ships in the main attack. "My people know how to make old ships do impossible things," he told Cooper. "We will keep their attention while you take the palace." 3 days later, the largest space battle in galactic history began above the Kothani homeworld. Rebel ships of every size and design fought against the Imperial Navy's finest vessels. The space around the planet became a storm of laser fire and exploding ships. Morrison's cargo vessel Helena's Dream fought alongside sleek Zelrani submarines and massive Ketani mining ships. The rebels were outnumbered, but they fought with the desperation of people who had nothing left to lose. "Amy, get us closer to that destroyer," Morrison shouted to his navigator as enemy fire shook their ship. "Sam, I need everything the engines can give us." "Captain," Lisa Campbell called from the communication station, "Cooper's landing force has reached the planet's surface. They are fighting their way to the palace." On the planet below, General Cooper led a mixed force of humans and aliens through the streets of the Imperial capital. Carlos Martinez fought beside him, carrying a weapon he had taken from a dead enforcer. The farmer who had lost his son had become a warrior, driven by grief and rage. "Remember," Cooper told his troops as they approached the palace, "we're not here for revenge. We're here to end this war." But Carlos Martinez had his own reason for being there. When they reached the throne room where Emperor Vexmore waited with his personal guards, Carlos was the first through the door. The battle was brief but vicious. The Emperor's guards were skilled fighters, but they had never faced humans who fought like wild animals. When the smoke cleared, Emperor Vexmore lay dead and the palace was in rebel hands. Carlos Martinez stood in the center of the throne room, holding something small in his hands. It was a picture from Billy's book, the one showing children playing freely on Earth. The picture was crumpled and stained, but Carlos had carried it through every battle. "This is for you, son," he whispered, placing the picture on the Emperor's empty throne. The news of the Emperor's death spread quickly through the Imperial forces. Without their leader, the Kothani military began to surrender. Some ships fled to distant systems, but most simply stopped fighting. In the weeks that followed, the Rebel Alliance established a new government they called the Galactic Federation. Representatives from every free species gathered to write laws that would protect the rights of all sentient beings. The first law they passed was simple but powerful. No government could ever again prevent children from learning about their own history and culture. No child would ever be punished for asking questions or dreaming of a better future. On the former imperial homeworld, they built a monument to Billy Martinez. It was a simple statue of a boy holding a book, with words carved in the stone below, in memory of those who died for the right to learn and dream. Captain Morrison, now an admiral in the Federation Navy, brought Carlos Martinez to see the monument on the day it was dedicated. "Do you think he knew?" Morrison asked. "Do you think Billy knew that his death would change everything?" Carlos looked up at the statue of his son, forever young, forever brave, forever free. "I think he hoped," Carlos replied. "And sometimes hope is the most powerful weapon of all." The boy who died for asking questions had become the catalyst for the greatest liberation in galactic history. His legacy lived on in every child who would now grow up free to explore the universe and seek their own answers among the stars.